Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second panel discussion of the day. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome on board our speakers of this session. Up first, I would like to welcome our moderator of the session, Mr. Rajesh Kumar, Vice President Marketing, India and South Asia, UiPath. Now, I would like to introduce our panelists for the session, Mr. Vinay Kumar, Director, Artificial Intelligence, Azure and Search Partnerships, Microsoft, Mr. Anand Vaidya, National Business Manager, Advanced AI, Mr. KV Bipu, President Head Operations, Communities and Customer Services, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance India, Mr. Piyush Arora, Director and Head Strategy and Marketing, Honeywell. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their questions in the chat box, and the panel will address a selected few at the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Rajesh Kumar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka, and good afternoon, everyone. I first of all, I'd like to wish you all, um, safety and good passage through the current crisis we are in. I hope you and your, loved ones are in a good place. I mean, the situation is really, really dire. So, want to thank you again for taking the time to join us for this session. So, it's an interesting topic, and we have a very illustrious set of panelists with us. So we are hoping between all of us you will go back with some good insights or some takeaways for the day to day. And this session is completely interactive, so please feel free to give us your questions all through the session. We will try to take them during the session, or at the end of 2 or 3 questions. We definitely want to make time for audience questions. So let me first say a few words about each of our panelists. Let me first introduce Vinay. He has over 20 years of experience in cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and tech industry in a variety of roles in India and the US. Currently, he's part of the global business development function at Microsoft, structuring partnerships in the area of Azure, artificial intelligence, and cognitive services. So welcome, Vinay. Thank you for joining us. Let me next introduce Anand Vaidya. He's the National Business Manager for Advanced AI. He brings over 13 years of experience in B2B across large organizations like Nomura and numerous startups in leadership positions. Advanced AI is a leading AI-driven product company with specific focus on digital transformation, customer onboarding, and risk mitigation. They are so important in the situation that we are in. So thank you, Anand, and look forward to having your views on the panel. Let me introduce next Piyush Arora. He's the Director and Head Strategy and Marketing at Honeywell. He has over 20 years of experience across consulting and diverse industries with companies like Accenture, PwC, Tata Administrative Services, Nokia Networks, and so on. He has been working very closely with C-suite and promoter families to shape and execute their digital transformation and growth agenda. So Piyush, really look forward to getting your perspective, what it means for India Inc., vis-a-vis how global sees it. And last but not the least, my good friend KV Deepu is the President, Head Operations, Communities and Customer Services at Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. He's an alum of IIM Lucknow. He spearheads digital transformation for his company. Many of his accomplishments have been received very well and appreciated across the industry with various awards and press coverages. He is the recipient of 50 Fabulous Innovative Leaders Award, Celent Model Insurer 2020 Award, BFSI 100 Innovation Leaders Award, Marketer of the Year Award at India Insurance Summit, and many, many other awards, across the industry. If you're on LinkedIn, you just can't miss, the kind of contributions he's been making to the industry, especially in times of crisis and even before that, in the area of digital transformation and bringing new technologies in. It's also on the Harvard Business Review Advisory Council and an Ivy exec mentor. So welcome, Deepu. We'd love to have your view, on the panel. Now, to kick it off, I mean, I read some interesting statistic where last I saw was a economist intelligence unit survey, which spoke about 93% of the respondents they had among a CXO set of Global 500 that kick-started their digital transformation using the new age technologies. And so a bunch of surveys, I mean, they are not necessarily with the same audience or same company, but the findings seem to tie up. I mean, then I saw IDC survey which spoke about people are seeing these technologies, AI, automation, drive or help them with speed of response. Close to 80% people, reduce errors and mistakes, increase throughput without, the benefit of manual hands-on or hand-off, in the current scenario, improving customer satisfaction, and so on. Similarly, I saw a Cap Gemini thing where they're seeing impact in terms of three-fourths of people saw company revenue going up, profitability going up, operational expenses coming down, and more importantly, this has a route to business model innovation. McKinsey is talking about 3.6 trillion hours of work that is automatable. So this is going to go on for a long, long time. And I think employees are also increasingly looking at it as a means for relegating the mundane and being able to focus on work that excites them, that brings their creativity and innovation, to the fore. And the other side is, in Accenture survey, 75% of the businesses said that if they don't adopt AI in near future, they believe they risk going out of business by 2025. And people who have adopted, 80% of them, according to Gartner survey, said that they will increase and introduce more of AI in their business by 2022. So with that, I want to bring the first question, which I'll throw open to all of the panelists, and this is anchored to the current situation. How do you see continuing COVID crisis impact the C-suite perspective on digitizing their businesses? And the four areas. So I'll pick up and then I'll which is delivering timely and delightful experience to customers, planning for operational continuity in a non-manual handoff environment, keeping employees engaged, motivated, and productive, and managing risks and compliance requirement in a virtual world. So maybe I can invite Anand, you and Deepu first to talk about delivering timely and delightful experience to customers.
Yes, should I go ahead or?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Anand.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for invitation on the panel. So I was watching a TEDx video from 2019, and the panelist asked a very interesting question to the audience. How many of you enjoy your banking experience? And there was a lotter in the crowd. So on the one hand, we are very used to ordering food with a few taps on mobile. Opening a current account or buying an insurance policy is a very difficult experience. So let me quote a famous quote by Lenin. There are decades when nothing happens, and there are when decades happen. So clearly, when you're talking from a customer perspective, I'm talking about external customer and also about internal customer. So from an external customer perspective, given the current environment, we are seeing a lot of customer experience or digital transformation projects, which are not only talking about low code and no code, but also low touch and no touch. So what is happening is that you must be seeing a lot of advertisements during IPL on TV, where they are democratizing. You must have seen about RBI and video KYC. So we feel in 2021 and the new solutions will also come in. Talking about the internal customer is also a very important part. We'll see or less employee organization, which will continue to happen, and a lot of processes will continue to get provided. We have a film 2022, then probably will not be any in the audience. Thank you.
If you want to take from here.
Yeah. So thank you, Rajesh. I know obviously it's good to start, with the customer angle in mind. So essentially COVID-19, as one of my friends put it colorfully, it was a global unplanned UAT. So, we had to, kind of, jump in. And I think even the contact centers were shut down. Our digital assets, including our RPA bots came to the fore. So we were able to ensure a seamless, switch, without a single glitch. And even today, 80% of our servicing is digital. And in fact, our customer grievances fell by 90% during this period. People just did not feel the absence of the typical call center and the other manual assets that they were used to. All the digital assets came to the fore. Now going forward, Rajesh, I think it's going to be interesting. I think the world will be digital. It will be a combination of physical and digital. Because if you look at, let's say, our industry, insurance, the processing can be digital, but ultimately the fulfillment has to be physical. I mean, if your car is broken, you have to get it repaired. It can't be repaired digitally. If you are unwell, you have to go to the hospital, right? So the fulfillment will be physical, but the processing will be digital. And secondly, picking a cue from what we've discussed so far, the interactions are also going to be increasingly touchless because everybody is wary of touch. So increasingly, we'll see voice coming into play. And just to give you an example, today when customers walk into our branches, we leverage QR codes. They just scan the QR codes and the processing happens. No handshake, no paperwork. And similarly, our bot is integrated with Alexa and Google Assistant. So you can even give a voice command and get your request fulfilled. So that's how the past has been, and that's how we see the future going forward.
Thanks so much. Maybe Vish, I can invite you to talk about how do you plan for operational continuity in this kind of environment when people are scarce or not advisable to have.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajesh. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent. So I think the problem around the unpredictability of employee downtime, manpower availability or unavailability in sense, and work from home scenarios, I think that's common to everyone. And more than ever, the operations and operators, both building as well as industrial operators, are facing challenges in keeping their operations running in a seamless and optimized manner. So this is really a big challenge, but I would say the good news is that it has also accelerated the adoption of a lot of digital technologies by these operators. And I'll probably list a few of them which we are seeing and also helping our customers along with that. First of them is both the industrial and commercial building operators are now really going for remote operations for their distributed assets, for distributed sites. And this basically involves now leveraging their OT stack in a really good manner, whether it's collecting data from assets, process, building sites in a very seamless manner, using the cloud stack to ensure that they are really enriching the data with the business and enterprise information, and leveraging analytical AI models like digital twins to make the remote operator make those decisions in a much more informed and optimized manner. At Honeywell, we have our platform, which we call, Forge Enterprise Performance Management, which cuts across site operations, energy and sustainability, asset performance, as well as digital workers. So I think this is one aspect which ensures that the operations are kept live. The other area is around cost. Obviously, cost and bottom line is playing into a big role today. There's a lot of pressure. And optimizing operations and reducing cost becomes extremely important. Again, this is where AI-led technologies like digital twins come into fore, where we are helping the operations run in very good process control scenario, in the right optimized manner, assets being performing in the right manner. Similar is around batch quality operations, which has come to fore more with pharma and specialty chemicals. For example, we have Honeywell Sparta AI-led solution, which ensures that AI models help the batch controls run very properly. And finally, it's around employee productivity as well, right? Because we also have small and medium enterprise who cannot probably run their operations in that manner. Well, that's where probably the digital technology will impact the most, but will probably take a bit of time to adopt. And that's where technologies like AR, VR, video analytics can help really improve employee productivity. But I just want to end with one small point here, that as we open up these digital operations more and more, there's a huge vulnerability that we are opening up is on the cyber side. I think there are published, unpublished reports in the last 6 to 8 months where the sites have been, whether it's smart cities, whether it's buildings, whether it's plants, have been really hacked on. So I think one of the critical elements also would be that while we are preparing for these digital operations, we are also ring-fencing ourselves with the right tools, technologies, processes, protocols, and the excellence centers to really ring-fence ourselves from these cyber attacks. So I think overall, I think there's a lot of good movement towards digital adoption, but I think more and more needs to be done here.
So thank you for that, Piyush. Let me bring you to you, Vinay. Talk about how do you leverage these technologies to keep employees engaged, motivated, and beyond being productive, of course.
Thanks, Rajesh. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Okay, great, great. Thank you. So, see, one of the, I think, most profound and perhaps most durable impact of COVID will be on how we work. This will change forever. That's if you look at businesses around us, most businesses have gone fully virtual. Some of the employees who have started, in the last year or so, they have not even seen the company headquarters or any offices for that matter. Workforce is fully distributed. People have moved to smaller towns, people have moved across state, and in some cases, they have also moved across country. So these transitions, these changes raise a very, very critical question for most CXOs that in absence of a physical presence, how does a company create a sense of working for that organization? How do you create a culture, a mission, and a sense of connection between the employees? Um, and this is, I think, this is where CXOs and CIOs, etc., will have to spend a lot of time in thinking through what really creates and defines the employee experience in this new age that we are seeing post COVID, and which will, I think, will be for a very long time and probably forever, for a digital first work. And it has, the time has come to really acknowledge that place is where work happens. It's not a physical location. Place could be anywhere, and the office is where the internet is. So the digital experience of working for a company is basically what defines the employee experience. Gone are the days when new employees came and we had a full day of orientation, and their offices were decorated, etc. All that is sort of thing of the past. So the key, I think, question for all top executives would be to how to keep employees engaged, motivated, connected in this new world, and how do you create a sense of company culture, company purpose? How do you make sure that the employees really get them? And what we are seeing is actually, because of all this, new technologies are emerging. There is this concept of employee experience platforms, which brings AI and other technologies together to create a system of shared understanding and connection that ensure everyone is in sync about what they know, what they are doing, and why they are doing. So CXOs will have to look for such solutions where people and AI, could really work together, providing employees knowledge in the context of their workflows.
Thank you, Vinay. That's really, a very, very insightful comment. I'm going to ask Deepu anything specific from a motivation perspective. I know you've been trying some very interesting things in your organization to
Yeah.
engage and motivate employees.
Thanks, Rajesh. I like the way, Vinay articulated, that place is where, work happens, and office is where the internet is, I think, well articulated. Just to add to what, he said, I think one thing which we saw, in terms of keeping employees engaged during the work from home scenario, because now we're talking about people who are socially and physically distanced, but you have to keep them emotionally and digitally connected. And, we said, let's convert, this necessity into a virtue. And what we did was, we said, now that people are working from home, why should we restrict our employee engagement programs? The typical ones like potluck, where people come with lunches, or, any painting, singing competitions to employees. Why can't we involve families now, because they are working from home? That one move of moving from employee engagement to family engagement worked wonders for us. So to give an example, we had a master chef competition, one weekend. So somebody's mother, somebody's sister, somebody's wife, somebody's daughter, all posting recipes and now photographs, in a WhatsApp group. Entire families got engaged. Ironically, at the end of it, our employee engagement scores, or rather I should say family engagement scores now, they were higher compared to the scores pre-pandemic. So that was one way, by which we kept employees, motivated. And to add to what Vinay said, I think work from home, technically you can have expanded. It can now become work from anywhere. So it opens up, a lot of avenues. People do not now need to shift from small towns to big cities for opportunities. You can tap hitherto untapped, talent pools. You may have homemakers who are available for a certain portion of the day. So I just think, the dynamics will change completely, in terms of availability of talent as well.
Thank you. Thanks. So the last question, I think we're running a little bit over time, but I do want to get some comments on the fourth part of this question, which was about, how do you see this impacting managing of risk and compliance, in a virtual world, some of which you hinted at earlier, Piyush. And, some of it also, I think overall the world is getting a lot more sensitive, today, both geopolitically and that, I guess, translates in many ways to technology as well. Apish, to you, and then maybe you make a comment, and then we move to question 2. So, audience, please feel free to keep typing in your questions, and organizers, if you can send those to us after question 2, we can take some of those. Back to you, Apish.
Yeah, Rajesh, I'll keep it brief here. I think two things. I would define here risks on two parts. I think first risk is the compliance risks itself, right? Wherein, with so much disruption in operations, it's very difficult to keep operations in a very compliant manner. And it becomes even more critical in industries like pharma and other industries where there are regulations which are extremely strict. Today even the inspections are becoming remote, and all these things are becoming very, very time consuming. So I think first, automation there again plays a very critical role. As many manual handoffs are taken off, simple things like the quality checks, simple things like the batch controls I talked about, other areas like environment management solutions, right? Systems which can automatically enable the environment in which the entire production is being done. I think some of those help in mitigating those risks to a great extent. So I think that helps to comply with. The second one, I think, which I guess from an employee standpoint also we all talked about, is post-COVID there will be certain protocols that will become literally, sacrosanct to us, which is about temperature monitoring. We can't let our guards down. So whether it's temperature screening, whether it's social distancing in offices and other things. And that's again where technologies can help in compliance, whether it's around video analytics based screening of people, PPE compliance and things like that. And finally, I think the larger risk, I'll probably not repeat that, I still believe is going to be cyber, because with more digital, and I don't think so at this point of time, we are well equipped for the IT and more importantly, the OT attacks that we are right now looking at. So I think these three would be for me most critical areas from a risk standpoint.
So, thanks so much. So Anand, if you have a quick comment, then I'd like to move to the next question. I don't think I can hear you.
Anand, I think you're on mute. Yeah. So in addition to what Mr. Piyush said, one of the largest risks in the financial industry will be the impersonation or spoofing, because a lot of transactions are happening virtually. So it is very important to know that Anand Vaidya is actually Anand Vaidya and not Mr. Rajesh Kumar. And that's where a lot of technologies like AI, ML, face comparison, and alternative data are also coming into the picture to make sure that we are onboarding the right person. So thank you. That's the comment from my side.
So thanks, Anand. Now I'll take one question around to everyone. I think it's a fair amount of consensus that AI, automation, the newest technologies are here, and both imperative but also very, very beneficial. So what is holding us back, especially companies in India and business leaders in India, from taking a lead in this vis-a-vis rest of the world? So maybe I can go around in any order. Vinay, maybe you can start. Then I go to Deepu, then Anand, then finish with Piyush.
So, see, I think, Rajesh, I would say that there is a lot of actually work already happening in India, both from platform providers like us, as well as from startups, from companies who are looking at deploying AI for overall efficiency, cost reduction, customer delight. So it does take time, but from my vantage point, when I sort of talk to companies, talk to even internet unicorns who have reached a certain scale and size, they are all using AI in some ways, and we may not realize it, but I think when you're using their system, or when they are coming up with some recommendation for you, or when they're suggesting something for you, there are complex sort of models behind all that. So and it's happening around the world. So I don't think it's just unique to our country. It's happening around the world. Maybe some countries are ahead of some other countries, but I think the overall global momentum that I see for adoption of AI, machine learning, this new technologies is really accelerating. And I think this COVID, somebody said it very nicely that COVID has really crunched or at least created the next whatever we would have seen in the next decade in 1 year. So I think a lot of companies have accelerated their digital adoption programs because of COVID. So I think we will see a lot more in India and also rest of the world going forward.
So Deepu, to you, I mean, thank you, Vinay. Deepu, to you, what do you see holding companies back, and what will be your advice to them to accelerate it?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very timely question, Rajesh, because there is talk of getting into a digital way of not just working, but a digital way of living, but it's not all pervasive. See, at one level, now I'd like to keep it very simple. I think what happens with most people is, that we caught up, we get caught up with the herd mentality. A lot of people use terms like, AI, ML, deep learning, and everybody wants to just, latch on to the latest buzzword. I think what's very important is to put the problem first on the table. What is the problem you're solving, and then apply the right tool. It's not the other way around, right? You can't put the cart before the horse. I think if that happens, if you put the customer first, if you put the problem first, and then you solve, because every solution does not require the latest state of the art technology, then I think you'll see rapid adoption from an AI perspective, or any other technology that we need. The other is, if you're also looking at adoption at scale in India, you see, we are a multilingual country and English is only used by X percentage of the population. But if you look at most digital assets, English is a language by default. So how do we, talk to customers in the language that they understand? I think if we can do that, then we can move from India to Bharat and also ensure, widespread adoption. So to my mind, it's these two aspects: put in the problem first before the solution, and the other is, going multilingual.
Thank you. Thanks, Deepu. Anand, your perspective?
So just to take forward from what Mr. Deepu said, let me take a current example. If you try to book a vaccination appointment on CoWIN app, if you are in a metro, all the appointments are gone in a jiffy. But if you are in a rural area, what happens is that there are many appointments which are lying unused. So while the companies are doing digital transformation, the challenge is the lack of digital literacy as far as the end consumers are concerned. So what Mr. Deepu rightly said that there is a lot of difference between Bharat and India and English and other languages. So that is the gap which needs to be filled in. Probably we need some sort of mutual fund sahiye kind of campaign. I don't know, but there is a lot which needs to be required on the digital literacy front.
Okay. Got it. Thanks. And Piyush, your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Rish. I'll probably touch upon a very different dimension, which is very similar to, or maybe it's starting from where Deepu talked about saying it requires business case first. Absolutely right. I think what I want to touch upon is the practical realities and actual implementation. And there are two areas that I think are very critical. I think one is open collaboration. I think it's no brainer that AI really relies on a lot of data modeling. And this data is not just concentrated to a few OEMs. And again, I talk from more plant and buildings perspective. There were times wherein there were OEMs who used to model it based on the data they had for their own equipment. But now the assets are distributed. There are multi-vendor models. People are having all kind of instruments and assets which work more in tandem with each other. So now it's not so much about the best sound from one instrument. It's all about the symphony and harmony that we want to listen to across multiple aspects. And what that requires is a bit more open collaboration between not just the OEMs, but also the users, the customers, to train these models to become very, very effective. Because if that is not, then people will start having lesser confidence in those models, and the benefits that Deepu talked about will really not come about. So I think that's point number one. And the other thing that we are seeing even in our operations is the mindset change for adoption, both with respect to the providers as well as with respect to the recipients in terms of how they are utilizing those analytical capabilities. There is a need to change from a KPI to SLA model, but then are we really utilizing? We have seen most of the customers probably utilizing 10 to 15%. So I think there is an onus both on the providers to ensure that the customers are able to leverage that analytical insight so that they become the reference points for further. And this is, by the way, this is going to have an exponential effect because more and more people will start embracing and acknowledging these powers. I think the use will multifold increase.
Thanks, Piyush. I have two questions from audience, and organizers, please feel free to keep sending these to us. So the first question is, how do companies manage complexities while carrying on with their digital transformation? So, and the second one is, in your respective companies, what is the dollar impact or, I would say quantitative revenue impact that you have seen of implementing digital transformation pre and post implementation? So anyone can take it. Deepu, you want to take it, and then I can bring to anyone in the group. We can't hear you, Deepu. You're on mute.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe somebody else can take it. I think there's just slide system. I'll just fix it. I'll just go next.
Yeah. So anyone, Anand, you want to take it? Piyush, you want to take it? Or Vinay, you want to take it?
So quick comment from my side. I mean, you mentioned about the ROI from the project or something. So usually, it depends on the OPEX or CAPEX nature of the project also, because those are the kind of calculations which are involved. So sometimes you see a dip in the beginning, but as the ROI starts flowing in, then you actually see the virtue and the value when you go ahead with the transformation projects. So that is my quick comment.
I think, I've talked about a couple of areas. I think there are a couple of them where ROI is, you can look at it as zero and infinity. I mean, things are like cyber or even business continuity, because, if you're not able to run the operations, literally it's zero, value from, or rather if it's continuing, you don't see really value there. But the day it crashes and your remote operations take over, I think it's a, infinite kind of returns. But on more specific areas wherein the operations help in improving, let's say, energy consumption, or let's say the batch operations, I think we've typically seen a predictive maintenance or energy management control systems provide anywhere between 5 to 6% to 10%, cost savings as far as just purely energy management and sustainability are concerned. Batch operations, I would say, batch controls are probably the most, because that's where it's a direct revenue impact. If the batch is not correct, ultimately you end up selling it at a discount, or sometimes it's a waste. There, depending on industry to industry, we see benefits even to the extent of close to 10 to 25% of the revenue. So that's pretty high. But it all depends on the levels at which you are optimizing. But I like a point that Anand is saying, which is these don't happen overnight. I think they require patience, because it requires data to be modeled, people to be to have the competence to really start utilizing that analytical insight and take decisions based on that. So it takes time. Would be 5 to 6 months to 7 months, but when it does, I think these are the ranges of improvements that you can see.
I can sort of give an example. I agree with the panelists that it is a journey. It's not a switch that you adopt digital transformation today and tomorrow you'll start seeing better returns. So in my experience, we were working with a marketplace, a large marketplace in India with more than 50,000 sellers, and they were getting over 5 to 10 million images a month for products that these sellers were selling. And before they go live, they have to make sure that these images don't contain anything which is going to cause trouble for this marketplace. For example, let's say a tricolor doormat, or anything which has profanity or abusive picture. It's very hard to do this, with human capital. So they had a mix of human capital as well as some technology, but they were looking for better ways to do, this image, I would say, selection or approval process. And then there was a model that we created. Basically we had a training model which learned from the images that they had coming in from sellers. Then we started sort of rejecting some of the images which were not really worthy of going live. And slowly they started seeing benefit. And over time, the model really got trained. So before any image got published, it ran through the model. And if it got rejected, then there was some moderation process, which was run by humans, and they would make sure that the model is saying what it is saying. It's true. So over time, they saw a lot of, huge benefit. This took about 6 to 9 months, but it took them, it was a major ROI gain for them. But it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. The models have to be trained. Every business has its own peculiarities. Some, I'm talking about this image example, some have customer service, some have other sort of scenarios where they want to deploy AI. So it is very, very situational, and it does take time. But I think once it is fully implemented and the models are fully trained, it creates a huge ROI in favor of the company.
Rajesh, to very quickly add, what we have seen, of course, that the extent of ROI and the duration of ROI, varies from firm to firm, and varies on the project, depending on the project in the firm. But the benefits typically fall in three buckets. One is, hard ROI, clearly, the cost benefit analysis, what you invest in and you get savings in terms of OPEX over a period of time. The other is what we call soft benefits, in terms of your customer satisfaction, NPS, so on and so forth. And the third is intangible, in terms of your brand value, So we have seen these three, benefits, typically flow over time.
So I think we have very little time left. Now questions are suddenly beginning to pour in droves. So let me ask one. I'll direct to one each. So Deepu, back to you. Identifying areas which can be automated has always been a challenge. In light of this present situation where AI and virtual environment is all we're relying upon, how can we improve on this challenge? So maybe brief answer from everyone. I'll throw one to each.
Sure. It's very simple. Start with a very simple grid. One is pick the maximum, the pain point which create maximum friction for customers. Let's say that's on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, you pick your ease of implementation, then draw up a heat map. And what is, high impact on customers and can be easily implemented goes into the first bucket. Then the second bucket is high on impact on customers, but again, maybe it's more difficult to implement. Then you can go into the remaining areas. We've done that. It's worked for us.
Perfect. Thank you. Now to you, Vinay. For a country like India, wherein most of the population is not at all used to using new technologies, how can we structure services so that everyone opens up to accepting this new change? I think we covered a little bit, but I'd love to make you make some comments.
I think it goes back to previous comments about voice enablement. So one of the things that we are seeing is that for mass market India to participate in this new era, voice is becoming a very, very important medium, because people outside of, let's say, 150, 200 million population don't really feel comfortable even with their own language, in typing in their own language. So voice is going to become a very dominant medium. So models which are trained in understanding local languages and responding in local languages, I think they would really bring mass market participation.
Perfect. Now, a quick question to you, Piyush, and then I'll bring last one to Anand. This question is, with this virtual workplace concept, how to deal with challenge of distracting environment? When most people feel distracted with a constantly virtual world, it's not so much directly connected to the topic, but it's an interesting question nonetheless. So
I think it's pretty relevant to all of us, right? I mean, we are all going
through that's why
distractions come in multiple manners. I think we've already talked about employee engagement, and using technology for employee engagement is extremely important. I think we've seen some benefits of that. 5 people, 6 people. I mean, we are having these webinars, and I'm sure a lot of webinars are happening. I don't think so. We had a lot of time in the past where we were connecting back as a team, right? So I think there will be distractions, whether in the virtual world or in the physical world. I think the idea is to channelize the energies in the positive direction. I think I see using technology and medium to come together more often and exchange thoughts more at a professional, and as Deepu talked about how engaging families together, I think that's one way to distract the distractions in a lot of ways. So I would rather see this as I would try to at least see the positive silver lining in this and work towards that.
So I'm going to take risk of going 1 minute over to Anand to bring you last question. areas where India can deploy AI automation for overall good, community, country, civil society?
Very simple example is healthcare. Right now, we are seeing a lot of discussion on Twitter, asking for oxygen and bed. So Twitter is a great communication platform, but not a great tool for discovery from a demand and supply perspective. So that's where if the solution which is driven by AI, where the demand and supply can be easily found out. So that is one way. Another way is like credit for personal loans or SMBs, especially for people who are outside the ambit of credit bureau. It is very hard for them to find the credit. So if we are able to underwrite them using AI and ML and alternative data sets, we can bring them inside the ambit of credit. So these are the two things where I see the.
Thank you. Thanks, Anand. What a interesting panel, and what a privilege to host this panel. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you, panelists. And for all audience, this is just the start of this conversation. It's actually a longer conversation. So please feel free to reach out, engage with all the panelists or me over social media. We'll be happy to continue the conversation, help answer queries, or continue this dialogue. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, IMAI. Back to you, Priyanka.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Rajesh. Thank you.
And thank you so much
Thank
for
you, Rajesh.
such a brilliant discussion. A special thanks to all our panelists and moderator for keeping the conversation exciting. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Please stay tuned for more such discussions. I would like to thank our partners, Accenture, Automation Anywhere, Route Mobile, and Tata Teleservices. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.